Hi everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the Rude Rebel Radio. Hi Jonathan.
Hi Sandra.
We skipped a week.
We're so bad and we need to be spanked.
We had to really take that week off because we practice what we preach. Life happens when you're busy making other plans, and I don't know how it's been for you guys, but it's been crunchy. And sometimes it's good to take a pause and to take a breath and to say, okay, let's look at priorities. Where am I in my self-connection and what needs tending to, rather than what my agenda says I should be doing. So I'm sure that you guys can relate. I think everybody is kind of affected by changes at the moment. It's although it's summertime, you should think that it's actually it's
like roadworks in your favorite city. Like when do they change it? Not in winter or in fall, in summertime. So it's like it's the same thing. It's like the sun is shining. And I feel you look at astrology sites, you look at energetic broadcasts, intuitive websites, everybody's saying the same things. We have never seen spikes this big since 700 years ago. It's just on all levels.
And then everybody complains about the roadworks when really the roadworks are actually making the road a little clearer. So we're back. What's the topic for this week, Jonathan?
It's one of the quotes from my one of my favorite sci-fi series, Star Trek. I'm as well a Star Trek as a Star Wars fan. So, although Star Wars fans out there, don't take my head off. But it's the famous quote from the Borg, which is those mechanical guys that form a hive mind to control basically the universe, and their tagline is "Resistance is futile." So nice and dark, but I don't think we mean it that kind of dark, right?
Yeah,
that pause was way too long.
By the way, if you're just listening to this and you can't see my facial expression, you can watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. It might give a little bit of context every now and then, as well as be confusing. No, you've just given me a nice new twist to this whole thing that I think it's not as dark as we make it out to be. That goes for the whole journey, because once you understand that all that you're resisting is your own self, and the darkness is merely whatever is yet to be explored and discovered, it is a perspective change. It is a complete change in looking at the and I wouldn't even call them challenges anymore, invites to be present with everything, because everything is constantly speaking with you. Your whole creation is constantly giving you feedback.
Or signs that energy is your energy, or your resistance is ready to come home, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. So it's not as dark, but I think it is as inevitable as it sounds.
Yeah, because darkness is only those parts that are still unknown.
Yeah. No, but I mean more inevitable as in the sense of you can make it very easy and by accepting that all of this stuff is coming home now, and it's coming home at a higher speed than it's ever come in, like the information or the feedback to yourself. But there is an inevitability to it. You can't escape it. You can't sort of like we used to do, like brush it under the carpet or turn a blind eye or pretend it isn't there. I think that, for me at least, that box of tricks has really run out of steam.
Because you're basically just fulfilling your own vision. So the two parts of you, the soul and the human, now working together. And everything is supposed to be known. There is no darkness. So every resistance that comes up needs to be looked at, and therefore the resistance is futile. And I think that part is now landing in such a clarity and bigger picture and honest look at myself And I'm seeing other people, even that I thought that weren't on the same path, even, in non-spiritual circles, do the same thing. So it seems to be like
trend.
It seems to be like what's the latest trend? Oh my God. But how do you see every piece of the puzzle now falling into place with everything going on in the world? Is it a little bit too broad, maybe?
How do you see everything falling into place with everything? Everything, everywhere, all at once. Great movie. Go see it now. Yeah, Jesus. And poor guy, he has nothing to do with this. No, I see a direct correlation between everything that is still being stirred up. And if I compare it to 8 months ago or even a year ago in my life, it's minor things. Really is. It seems big the moment it happens, but then when I really accept or allow it to talk to me, I notice, it's my reaction that's still big based on the past, based on my memories, blah, blah, blah. But if I can take just long enough of a pause to not immediately react and then react on that reaction, like I want that to go away, or just stick with it. This feels really annoying and big. Okay, deep breath. What's happening? It's all me with me talking to me. Okay, so it's maybe reminds me of something external that happened in the past, but ultimately it's me talking to me. And I know this by now. So it still magically doesn't feel wonderful, but it's not unknown to me what is happening. It used to be months or years before I really realized, wait a minute, that's a big change that's happening, and that means you have to go through the resistance of change. And now I know it in the moment, or as long as I can sort of take the pause, which not always works, but most of the time it does, to go, I'm really annoyed right now, having a huge reaction, and sometimes even allow that reaction. Just almost like willingly drive the ship into the storm of my reaction, so that it's almost like play it out fully without the guilt or the shame or the resistances. Just go, I'm really pissed off, and I'm take the time for it. And then I can't keep that up very long anymore. So even though I'm getting really annoyed, I'm almost like laughing halfway through it, going like, oh shit.
So the process has become easier individually, although maybe the ripples seem like waves. So at least that's true for me. I'm not going to fill it in for you. Like, I feel that the stuff that's now in my face is very big, but the way that I navigate through it has become graceful, almost beautiful, and touchingly revealing itself to me in a bigger picture that I go, okay, that's it. And what I was talking about before, like on a bigger world scale now, I see that the world is dealing with these things in the same manner. So it's not even, just exclusively because, we're so much more mature. It's not about that. It's the quality of the time, I feel.
It seems it's happening to everybody.
Yeah. And our dear friend Amar has used this phrase, and I'm going to steal it for this podcast. Copyright Amar. It's not about comfort. It's about fulfillment.
Yeah.
So once I understand that I'm fulfilling my own path and my own vision and my own self-fulfillment, then I can actually let go of the idea of, but I want to be comfortable going through it.
Well, and the being comfortable part, and I've ran into this a lot with myself the last weeks, is it's still the old Band-Aid. It's still the old, pacifier of things I think I need or I deserve, that's even worse, to relax myself, and I'll be able to handle this if, and then fill in if with whatever you can come up with. So it's I wrote this morning in my own journal, which I haven't been doing for ages, for years.
We've been telling a bit of everybody else to do it.
I think the last entry was 2022, which was kind of interesting because there was a little list of things I wanted to achieve, and I feel I have. So that was kind of like it was great to read back this morning. But I wrote something in the lines of of the selfless act. So the selfless act in instead of claiming all these things I need, or I have a right to, or have a righteous opinion about, it's the selfless act of, and I'm going to use very spiritual terms here, shutting the fuck up and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Walking the walk and talking the talk instead of just talking the talk. I think we're both good talkers, and I spend so much time talking about stuff, and I can do that really well, but that doesn't mean I live it.
Yeah.
And I'm finally running even out of that dialogue of blah 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 blah. No, it's just shut the fuck up, do the work selflessly, because it's going to make you better. It's going to make your life more balanced. But stop with all the bullshit. Stop with the excuses. Stop with the pacifiers or the little tricks to what do you think the human needs, except for a safe space and a quiet space to gather your thoughts. And I wrote this morning, it's the selfless act that leads you to a self-full life.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be able to let all of those accolades, all of the applause, all of the outside acknowledgement go. Because a selfless act is you do it because you want to do it, because you feel like doing it. And it's not you do it because the world was going to see you one way or another, or even yourself seeing you in one way or another. Do it because it feels right, because it's an inspired action, and then whatever happens because of it is genuine, is full, and all the other stuff is just an approximation of full. What I think is a full life, and my human doesn't have the slightest clue what that looks like.
Or just wants to be a little bit more comfortable. It wants to be, have a little bit better car, have a little bit better house and life and
better
boyfriend,
health,
girlfriend.
Yeah. And ultimately, it has no clue. It really has to surrender to a larger part of me. To we call it wisdom or intuition. It doesn't really matter how you call it. But that does mean being in service to that part of you, being selfless to that bigger part that knows how to get there. And I think the human does know how it feels when the human is in it, and there's not a lot of agendas going on. And is sort of truly in service to the higher part of itself, then it knows how that feels, because there's not a lot of details. We talked about this before. There's not a lot of agendas. There's no timeline. It's just, oh, wow, this feels great. Let's keep on doing this. And that's sort of the only agenda.
And it's here. It is tangible within your own beingness. So you go from doing to affect a certain outcome, right, to being, and therefore, discovering that part of you has so much more depth. Yeah. So, the doing can bring me great results. I have a really big... I'm so sorry. Sometimes I tell myself little jokes in my head, which are really funny. If you want to be in on the joke. I have a really big willy. The will... Not going to put it on the table. This is where we start.
I need to have a censor button, like beep, beep.
And this is where people will now go from audio only to video just to see what she means.
What the hell?
I can will things into existence.
Oh.
And here it is.
It's a family show after all. Jesus.
I think it's E-rated anyway. I think it's really important to look at the dynamics that have gotten us until this point of awareness, where you go, okay, I'm quite obviously on a journey. This ship can't be turned around. So what has gotten me here? And that's actually equality. And even though we've created coping mechanisms around it and a lot of shame and guilt, once you enter a safe space, the shame and the guilt dies. It's a beautiful saying called, it goes, shame dies when stories are told in safe spaces. So I can forgive myself for, all of the mishaps and my misbehavior and being out of line in the past just because I didn't know it any better. That Willie has actually brought me here, and now I can turn it around. And now I have to turn it around because otherwise it's working against me. And that's that part of feedback resistance. Yeah. Because, we are in a slowed down reality where, sometimes cause and effect can have a little bit of a delay. Yeah. That you run into this huge purging and it just feels like dying, and, then the phoenix rises from the ashes.
Yeah. What in your mind, or what do you feel is the positive of this?
Like a huge willy.
Besides having a huge willy, what's the positive of resistance is futile? That means basically give up fighting, give up reacting. I mean, that's what I'm make of it, and maybe our listeners have different definitions for themselves. But what do you make of that? Like, okay, so fighting is all but useless, and I think we've discovered that in the past, that keeping the same reaction or taking the same actions, even though it's not leading you anywhere, we were sort of wizened up to, okay, those things really have run their course. So they're not only useless, they're not getting me any closer to where I want to be, but they actually start hurting now, and quite bad. So it's almost like turn the ship around and just go with the stream, go with the flow. But what's the positive? Because we've just talked about resistance is futile. We talked about that the energies are really high in the world, so it doesn't exactly feel like a safe space of giving up or letting go.
I think the difficult part. So almost like you want to give a little bit of a disclaimer here. The difficult part is taking responsibility for the projections. So things feel unfair. Things feel like, why are they happening to me? The world is so mean. I didn't deserve this. And then you go into the other part of, but I've deserved this. Only to come back to understanding that, again, it's you with you. And I had a good example in my head this morning when I was journaling. I see it as a big construction site, and the project is called "Let's Rebuild the System." Right. So the architect of it, my soul, has the big vision. Mm-hmm. It made sure that the resources are there. It made sure that the time is right, that everything is in line, so this project can go forth. My human is on the ground wearing a little yellow helmet and is responsible for the actual actions, picking up the right tools, making sure that the construction site is clean. And I'm getting feedback from the architect, what's the next step here? And I'm saying like, oh no, but I need a hammer for this. And then, the architect goes, no, but that's not that's not the right thing. And then I start arguing with it, and I start really claiming my position and working against it, therefore making the whole process much more difficult.
Yeah.
Now we're in a place, I feel, that those two parts that have been really annoyed by each other because, soul goes, what the fuck, like, I can't be any clearer than I am. I'm giving clear memos and all of that.
I sent you the blueprint 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And the human says, oh yeah, but you don't understand what it's like down here. Now they're understanding. Soul goes, oh, it's actually painful for you, what you're going through. Oh,
there's
okay.
a density. It slows down.
Yeah. All right. Oh, that's what it feels like for you. And the human goes, oh, it only hurts because that's the memo coming in. So don't pay attention to the pain, but pay attention to the message behind it. I think those two things are coming together now, and therefore it's going much quicker. The flow doesn't really stall anymore, only to have big insights maybe, moments where you go, oh, okay, let's have a look at that dynamic now. But I feel the positive definitely for me is seeing the bigger picture and seeing that I'm standing in my own way and knowing that the quicker I can come out of it, no matter what that means for me. Sometimes we've talked about it before, that means staying in bed a little longer, but also it could be getting out of the bed a little bit earlier that gets me out of it. So I think the positive is definitely seeing that I have a participation in this and that it goes smoother once I embrace the whole process.
And once you participate.
And I don't need to make a point. I don't need to stand down here shouting up louder and louder and louder so that my point is seen. The meetings are happening anyway. Yeah,
I love that analogy. I think it's really, really powerful because it makes it so simple. And it is simple in its origins. And we decided to take a step into answering certain questions about ourselves, like you call it awakening or whatever we called it 20, 30 years ago. But ultimately it's now speeding up considerably, where you almost reached what do you call it, like a sweet spot, or like a critical mass, where you can't turn it around anymore. And it actually isn't as dramatic as it used to be.
It starts making more sense to the mind, and you need to take the mind along. What point is having a mind if you can't use it?
Yeah. So the especially the human has to have buy-in of the change, because ultimately it's a big change. What I do notice that sometimes the biggest reactions come up because it's almost dealing with the bottom of the basement. Like the last little things that are in there are usually the things that are closest to the initial trauma. Why we started behaving a certain way, why we started reacting a certain way, why did we start claiming attention in a certain kind of way. So it's almost like you're going backwards, almost dredging the swamp, and what's the last things you encounter is the first thing why you started the swamp in the first place.
So it's reparenting yourself. And I had a session last night, and it was really beautiful to see that once I understand that all of those coping mechanisms that are now appearing in my life as resistances from the outside all have one core. That's that trauma that you're talking about. So I can go into the basement and start fixing each leak, or I can say, let's go one step further and really look at the bigger picture here and go, I don't need to fix this coping mechanism. I can just look at it and go like, oh, that's why I created it. And I would even take a step back further to look at the bigger picture of that as well, and see that we've all come here to heal a part of humanity. You've come into your family, your ancestry, and your system that you're actively now radiating in to have a certain healing effect on it. We've all separated ourselves over the past eons, ever since the beginning of this project called Earth. And we've started this to argue for the separation. And now I think we as aware beings are in the beautiful position to see the synchronicities and the path ahead of us that we can use to heal all of those separation coping mechanisms. And that for me then isn't like, but I'm the black sheep of the family, and why do I have to deal with all of the shit that my parents didn't deal with, and or on a bigger world scale of as society, now the younger generation has to fix the mess that the older generation has made. No, we're all in place to do our part in this while we are becoming our full embodiment. So it's for me it's not a lose-lose. For me it's a win-win.
Yeah, well, that's pretty positive.
Yeah, I am a hopeful romantic.
Yeah. No, and I like what you said about you're exactly the right place at the right time where you need to be. As long, that's my version of it. As long as I am able and willing to be the standard myself. So again, being in selfless service to me, to a higher part of me, while still having my human part of me be able to experience it. And So for me, that those two really need to come together.
In the past, would you say that, and I'm already suggesting an answer.
Your Honor, defendant is leading the witness.
So in the past, you would have maybe been part of a church or like a society or something that you were serving. And it was a good thing to be selfless. It was a good thing to be in service. It was a good thing to be in complete surrender and almost suffering your way through it for the bigger cause or for that church
Not
or
almost.
religion. Yeah. Wasn't that all based on a misconception what it was really about? So the institution of the church, for example, any religion, was always supposed to lead you to your to the God self within you that you served selflessly. And then all of a sudden, all of the, what you call them, all of the things that you bring to the altar,
the sacrifices, yeah,
were all just meant for you. So it goes right back into the cycle of yourself. You're not missing anything when you sacrifice something. Actually, you're just setting it free from the story you've locked it into.
Yeah, or you're willing to give something up. You're willing to part with something, and that's of course the definition of change. Is if you're selflessly willing to, even if you loved it so much, you're willing to part with it in order to elicit change. And I love that. I love that analogy. I think we use that a lot. That God is just another word for divinity, and whether you want to interpret that as a God, or multiple gods, or just the term divinity, even that doesn't really matter. Like whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's one system. You can see yourself a really small part of the system and think, the rest of it doesn't have anything to do with you. Or you can see, just like Earth has always had the same amount of water on it. Always.
Yeah.
It's going through a cycle of sacrifice by, evaporating and then, going up into the sky and, raining back down on you. So in the end, if I'm sacrificing my resistance, this is getting meta here, and, stop arguing for it, then I can stop fighting myself and have a smoother experience.
That's it. And let's take that one step further. What are you, so when I give up my resistance or my fights and usually my fights is about something I tell myself I believe in, I stand for, is a cause I really rally behind, whether it's other people's causes or my own spiritual causes. But what do I sacrifice? What am I giving up by letting that go? Ultimately, it's my idea of the truth. It's not the truth because it doesn't exist. It's just only my truth. But my idea of the truth in the world. But I'm also sacrificing needing to be seen and heard, because if it's my truth and I know it, I don't need anybody to tell me. But why do I keep doing it? For me, it's very, especially the last couple of weeks, very clear that it's the last bits of stuck identity or identity that still gets something out of it. And it's most safety. So it's down to the last wire of feeling safe, and not even about being right, because I couldn't care less about being right. But it's so that's really gone down. But it's safety. It's the feeling safe, and a part of that is being seen and being heard, to make sure my place in the world is safe. And now I'm discovering, even journaling this morning, the moment I'm attaching myself to, I need to fix my surroundings in order to be safe. This was something I used to do as a kid a lot. Fix everybody in the room, make sure everybody likes me in the room before I can even attempt to get back to myself. And then always being frustrated, always being sick, always being the last one in line. And now I'm discovering, oh, wait a minute, if I stop picking up the turds of other people, picking up other people's shit, and they're not asking me to, I'm just doing it because I still have this idea of making my surroundings safe, and then complaining why my hands stink all the time, or why am I reacting to other people, or why I'm actually wanting attention from other people. So it's coming down to the absolute essence of even my safety has nothing to do with others. I mean, it's different if you live in a war zone or are in a very, very toxic relationship, but I'm fine, so it's the last trauma and remnants, which again I don't have to solve or, go into regression therapy to see how many times my mom hugged me, and it's completely besides the point. But there's still little things working in. Oh, my safety isn't dependent on others. I don't have to save anybody.
Well, are you still separate? I think that's really, it's not about comfort. It's about fulfillment. So where am I still not full? And therefore thought that I need to create a certain hard shell or this hard defined identity. It's like it's like the guy down at the construction site wearing a helmet. Maybe at some point he doesn't even need a helmet anymore because he knows there's nothing that can fall on my head. But as long as I still need to protect myself, I will have those experiences.
Well, and I like that. So what are we still defending? That either it's an identity or an aspect or a truth. What are we still defending? Because I'm running out of ideas or things to say on that. But my resistance is telling me that I'm still defending something, because it's not completely clean. And I don't know if it ever will be clean. I think as long as we're dealing with society and mass consciousness, which is a choice also to stay in, there'll always be, reactions and dynamics that you have to...
But it's all serving me. It's all in service of my own maturity.
But if you see that, the reactions itself are not important. It's just a little spike to balance something out.
So, you know that I've sort of put a little bit more of my time into astrology, or studying a little bit of astrology, because I've always been fascinated by it. So it's like the Pluto energy. Whenever Pluto is active in a sign, that means that you're being turned inside out. It's really uncomfortable. And we've just come out of a really long cycle of Pluto in Capricorn. We're dealing with the last little bits of that, the whole hard, harsh structure, our own truths, our own identity, our own, like making our own selves known in the world. And Pluto will remind us of our soul purpose, of our soul contract. So once I know that it's not working against me, that Plutonian energy that's, really uncomfortable to go through, it's just like the birthing channel. It's like once I know that it's bringing me into the next freedom, I can embrace it more. It doesn't make it less uncomfortable.
No, you still have to birth something.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a walk in the park giving birth to 2 kids, and I understand my daughter who's 19 now and says, I'm never going to have kids because it's just too painful. Like, yeah, you. But once I understand it's all happening for me and not against me.
Well, and I think that's the most important, and we say it in our documentary, Rude Awakening, as well. If you know what's going on, it doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it lighter. I think it does make it lighter because you don't have to fight so much. You don't have to resist it so much. But it's still painful. You still have to go through change. You still have to break, like lifetimes worth of patterns, which is always a shitty... I know very few people that say, yay, change.
And there's also a lot of grief connected to that, because once you see the bigger picture, you go, oh, fuck, that means that was all for nothing? Like, I shouldn't even... Why did I do that to myself?
And it isn't for nothing, because you'll end up in a more balanced life with yourself, by yourself. But it does feel very like, why the fuck did I waste 30 years or 40 years or sometimes more on a struggle that in the end was futile? That in the end it was like, this is natural. It's going to happen anyway because you chose to answer your own questions about awakening and who you are, which sets this whole thing in motion. And the less you struggle, the more easy it is.
But that means that, if I'm having that understanding or realization now, I don't need those coping mechanisms anymore.
No.
So I can grieve a little bit for all of the things that, I think I shouldn't have had to go through. But then again, I did, so it's all good. If I can leave it in the now, all of the sudden, all of that energy that I placed on resisting those parts or playing all of that identity are available to you now.
Yeah. And I think that's the most interesting thing. All that energy is like if I look at my life even a year ago, it was so much more dramatic than now.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a spike up and down, and now there's so little happening. Yeah, there's the occasional reaction, but all that energy that I spent in all of that defense, offense is available to me now. And I think I think I'm only just now learning how to use that in a different way.
So sometimes you might need a different perspective, right? When you're too tight in the experience because it's uncomfortable or whatever, you still go into a denser focus, and that denser focus will not make you see the bigger picture. So I think that's where those conversations come in handy, or, you know, where you listen to a podcast, or where you take a session with somebody that gives you a different outlook or a different perspective on the bigger picture, right? And then it lands, and then you go like, well, thank you so much. Now, you know, nobody can do it for me, but I can actually go, oh, that inspires me to look at things differently.
And it's almost like asking for reflection, or allowing yourself reflection in any way. It's almost like allowing yourself a little piece of the blueprint that the soul has, but through another. It's always easier. It's even journaling. I notice the fact that I write it down and it isn't ping-ponging in my head. And of course I think about stuff. So most of the stuff I wrote down this morning was a reflection of what I was thinking about. But it is different reading it back. It is. And it's even more different talking to a coach or talking to somebody who you trust. Of course, it needs to align. That can see, hey, I see this and this in you. And do with it what you will. So, I think it's a very good tool.
Yeah.
And I love to finish the analogy. I love the whole thing about the hard hats on the construction site. Really learning that I don't need that protection anymore. I don't need the fortress. I don't need to go into my cave like a lot of men do for like 3-4 days at a row to work my stuff out and then emerge like nothing happened, which I used to do to the biggest frustration of a lot of people close to me.
And it's also now the biggest frustration of women that men don't do that.
Yes. I think we can fill a whole nother podcast between the dynamics between men and women. But now I do it in real time. Now I do it in the present. And I still have reactions. Like I don't feel well and maybe I'm talking to my girlfriend and I was like, I don't want to be here. I just want to curl up in a ball and at home and not talk to anybody. But now I've forced myself kind of to take a deep breath, see it for what it is. I'm really annoyed and I have to be sort of, open and vulnerable towards my partner. But then in that taking a breath, in that pause, I just have enough room now to make a different choice and to actually stay in the situation, stay present, knowing she can't solve anything, but I can say, hey, I feel really shitty. And even by addressing it and somebody asking, hey, why, it's usually solved. And this used to take me weeks. It's now one question.
I think, because you're already at that stage where you can stay, but even if you can't, and you're in such a resistance that the next logical outcome would be an argument, to then stop your own... stop that dynamic and say, okay, I'm going to take myself out of this situation right now, because this can only lead to something that will do more harm than actually necessary. So
it isn't solving it because I'm having the reaction.
So now I'm taking myself out of it. I'm sitting with it. I'm taking my responsibility for it. I'm going to look at my reactions. I'll assume that there will be an insight and clarity that then I can take back into the connection, going back into the conversation and saying like, look, this is what was happening, and actually now I'm much wiser. And I think, knowing how to facilitate yourself, that's all somebody on that path ever needs.
And allowing or how would you say this? It's almost giving yourself the credit and the value to be able to tell your truth. Which could be walking away, but it could also be I think that was my biggest Achilles heel going through this journey. I was really bad at telling my truth and really bad at setting my boundaries. Mm-hmm. And then I constantly had to fight other people because, of course, if I didn't decide anything clearly, other people would usually decide it for me. And then I would get mad at them for deciding things for me and have to battle them, getting more proof of that this world isn't safe. Mm-hmm. So it's, once that loop ended, now I don't get into arguments anymore. I really don't. Mm-hmm. And the very few occasions, it's not really an argument. It's more a disagreement where at a certain time I do say, hey, wait a minute, this is I'm going to extract myself from this conversation. So it's a totally different ballgame now.
So whenever it does feel like an argument, I've stayed a little bit too long in a situation where I should have taken myself out of it before. Like, that's what I'm feeling. Whenever I feel like there's like an oomph coming within me, and again, Willie has a big part in this. I get to, it's an invitation to look at myself and say, oh, okay, it's only that strong now because I've overstayed where I should have taken myself out of this, or I took too much responsibility, or yeah.
And it's really funny because that's I mean, I cannot think of a scenario where that isn't true.
Yeah.
And I can, I had some arguments or fights with people that got really out of hand, but ultimately it's always down to the choice, saying my truth, and when there's no connection to even explore two truths, because you're having an argument, so you're not in agreement, but there's truth, your truth, and the other person's truth. But if there's no open and safe space to even explore that, even allowing yourself to get annoyed, but at a certain point you just realize, this is not going anywhere. This is just basically me talking louder, trying to convince you, and vice versa. So, okay, time to take myself out, and I at least take my responsibility for my side of the story. And whatever the other person does with it is whatever the other person does with it. But there usually was an agenda being seen by that other person getting my point of view, agreeing with me, seeing my pain. And that's where it always went on too long. And without exception, I feel.
I see it now as, because I've had the same path, coming to the same realization, it's really, I need to make sure that my boundaries are healthy. I need to make sure that that my own inner reflection is balanced and doesn't get so far out of balance that it is painful for me or for other people in the situation. But again, zooming out into the bigger picture, I have to see that my triggers, wherever I go into a deep reaction, were just highlighted, or almost like, on the blueprint of this incarnation, there were certain highlights used by my soul, saying like, those are the parts that you need to heal for your life, right, for your lineage, or for your, either lineage of incarnations or lineage of ancestry or whatever. So those things that you now discover aren't even an issue anymore. You've already healed.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's easy to talk about it in hindsight. Yeah.
So it's also not for naught, that's what I found, like when we just talk about the grieving process of why did I need to have 20 years of this lifetime to be in difficult relationships, or, to be abused or whatever. I was healing something that is so much bigger than I can perceive.
And you chose to explore it. I mean,
you chose to heal it.
You chose to heal it for yourself. You chose to explore it for your journey. You chose to explore it for your journey as a coach, as a filmmaker. So, I think there's also a distinct template, and I share that I needed to understand it. And a lot of the resistance was trying to understand it too much.
You're very thorough.
Yes, because there's a certain point that you basically have to just surrender.
Yeah.
And the understanding comes from a feeling, not so much from the intellect of I understand the minutiae of this dynamic. I've just seen it so many times in a row that that must be true. It's kind of a dumb mechanism. But ultimately, I know it because I can feel it.
You're overcommitted.
I totally overcommitted. Yeah, exactly. So I feel that whole safety thing, and I think resistance is futile. And that could sound like, okay, there's a storm coming that I can't get out of. But almost do the opposite. It's like, I know it's my storm. I know it's I call it forth. I know it's blowing out the last bits of energy that's
cleansing,
still reacting, right? And I'm safe, so I don't need the hard hat. It's almost like throwing away the hard hat just before the tornado hits, which sounds completely counterintuitive.
Little.
Yeah, but it and we've seen it enough, like with things around the movie and things in our own life. where that seemed like the stupidest thing to do, but it was kind of like the only thing left to do, and so we did it. Kind of forced. Like if my human had the choice, I wouldn't have really chosen it.
So
but
isn't
we kind
it
of
great?
had to.
But isn't it great? You know.
But now I'm trying to live a life where it doesn't force me like that, because it was I think quite extreme. And now it's just like, oh, there's resistance. Oh great. Oh, it's telling me something. Instead of, oh fuck, I can't deal with another round of this. I'm already tired, and all of those superlatives.
That used to be like, I don't know if our listeners can relate to this, but maybe give a little bit of context to that.
Well, it's, and I call it spiritual habits, is so much telling yourself or telling each other, because of course we're a witness to each other's journey, but the pitfall is complaining, gossiping, oh, us against the world, oh, the muggles out there, oh, my body hurts, and keep on repeating the same shite all over and over, and then looking at each other, yeah, me too. It's almost like the old fishwives having a gossip around the campfire, and it's almost like you create the separation. Even from a spiritual standpoint, it's actually even more dense and more sticky, because now I have a righteous opinion or righteous reason for it. Yeah, because the stars are in that constellation, and because there is a solar flare and the Schumann resonance. Shut the fuck up. It might all play a part, but the moment I keep saying it hurts, it's shitty, nobody understands me, what am I attracting? Exactly the same thing. And
then you go like, I can't do another round. It's like so unfair.
But who told me that? I told me that.
Yeah.
And it's also changing my own language. Is if I stop using the word safe, it needs to be a safe space. I'm always sizing things up. Is it a safe space? Instead of assuming that everything is a safe space until it shows me it really is not, and then I know in the moment, oh shit, time to take some action here. But let's assume that 99.9% is a safe space, and I'll know when it's not. So then I could put all my energy into it's safe, I'm free, I can do what I want. And that is a conditioning I think we're only now getting to, or at least I'm only now getting to, because I'm not tied up with my energy with constantly trying to avoid exactly what my soul is building in the blueprint. Blueprint. It's my blueprint.
It's lovely. It's just brewing.
Yeah. The blueprint on how to brew.
Yeah. So I agree. And I also realized that that spiritual righteousness and that entitlement and that whole spiritual willy. Oh my God.
I really have to try my best not to continue this analogy.
It's a beautiful release now. It feels so freeing. So everything that I'm shedding right now, and it's a lot, like, the details, it's not been pretty, but it is magical and it is beautiful, and we're holding each other accountable for ordering magic. And actually you can go back and re-listen or re-watch it. We said this,
Yeah, we're kind of journaling with you guys with this podcast.
Magic or bust. So
that sounds pretty inevitable. Right?
Yeah, and then when the delivery comes, you go like, oh, but I didn't order this.
Because magic or bust means, or what I've come to realize it means, magic isn't the same thing a little better. Magic is magic.
Yeah.
So when I order magic by proxy, by default, it is big change. Because if it's the same shit but a little bit better, it wouldn't be a big change. It wouldn't be magic. So by saying that out loud, and you too, everything came in all at once. Because you're like, you want magic, that's big change. Like, here you go.
Yeah, no,
And then you're like hyperventilating through the changes.
You wouldn't be ready otherwise, this wouldn't be happening if you weren't ready.
No, I know, but it's still... we still were dealing with the fallout of the change, or with the reactions to the change in some old ways, and I think that's now coming home it is the change. This is exactly what I ordered. And the less I struggle and wiggle and fight and resist, the more fluid it goes. And that sometimes means I have to surrender to some old ideas, some old identity, some old, hey, but I'm not seeing in her. Who gives a shit? But really you have to mean it. I can't pretend I don't care that people don't hear me and then complain or gossip about it later. So it's really you're teaching us to let it go.
And whatever those feedbacks of life are, like if it's just about, gossiping or not gossiping, well, you could say, I ordered a little bit more clear results by actual physical things shedding, or me needing to look at things that don't no longer fit into my life because they were part of an older identity. So now leaning into the storm, now leaning into the chaos. And I know it from the outside, it might look like, what the hell, what are you, why? It doesn't need to make sense to anybody else. It doesn't. No. And as long as I think it does, then there's something I need to look at.
Well, and then there's an agenda running, and that's not bad. I think we all have agendas running. But it's knowing when you do. Why am I so precious about this thing or this person or this event? Or, you know what? It's change. I ought to change, thank God, because I want things to be different and more smooth. Doesn't feel great because I'm kind of attached to this after 35 years, but you know what? Fuck it.
So by ourselves being out there, basically being very visible, and recording this and keep being visible, we're setting ourselves up for a lot of ridicule as well. I think that for me definitely is something. I know that a lot of people that have a bit of attention focused on them, whether that's because you run an Instagram account with regular videos or you are a celebrity or whatever, a lot of people then struggle with the feedback. But if I can see that basically what part of this is mine, what part of the reaction is mine, and how can I deal with it in a clearer way? Or
honestly look at why are you doing this? Like why are you making this podcast?
Yeah.
Why are we making this podcast? Is it to get a certain recognition? Is it to come across as wise? Is it basically just to talk to ourselves in witness to other beautiful people on this path? It could all be valid. It doesn't, and I don't have to get it right the first time, but the moment it starts getting weird because I have different agendas rolling, it's just seeing, I forgive myself from starting it from that perspective. At least I'm doing something. I moved something, but now it's impairing my judgment or my neutrality or the fun of it because it's becoming this.
So keep looking at the why. I think that's
and also if at any point we either of us decides, what, it's done. Then it's be honest to then it's done.
Oh, holding it all lightly, right?
Yeah.
Not allowing a new identity to form around something that is
to take over from the old one.
Yeah. Like just polishing the old turd.
Yeah.
Oh, this was beautiful, and I'm happy that we took last week off.
It was needed. There was so much happening,
and I know that a part of me felt guilty about it, and a part of me felt, but we promised. And it is what it is. I'm human. I think that's bearing our humanness more than anything on this podcast. It's exactly what the intention was.
Yeah, and I also feel that our listeners are very smart. That they're on the same type of journey, so they know how it goes. So I think that's we're not making this podcast just for everybody. So I think that's a comforting thought. Celebrate the humanness that's sort of still trying to make sense of it all, rather than pretending to be all like wise and holy.
Absolutely, and we do have wise and holy moments, and I'm happy to witness yours, and we hope you're happy to be part of this little Rude Rebel community, that you feel you can relate to a few things might be helpful for you, and a reflection. If you feel that there's a little bit of something that you need help with, a different perspective or whatever, reach out to me personally. I'm always happy to be there in that beautiful space of reflecting. You can write to me at sandra@zencubator.nl, or just use our reflections to go further. Journal.
Yeah,
We're now taking our own medicine.
Even I started this morning, the last of the Mohicans, but yeah, it really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep writing what you think. If there's any impulses, anything that you want to share with us or even read out, any topics that you would like us to cover. I think you actually said something today, which let's look at that female and male thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. I think I have a lot better perspective on it than I had, let's say 4 years ago.
Yeah, so that might be one of your next episodes.
Might be the next one, yeah.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Hope you're having a beautiful summertime, and I assume we'll be back next week. What's the email address if people want to write into our podcast?
Podcast@rude-rebels.com. Podcast@rude-rebels.com. And then we'll take a good look at it and maybe feature it as a question on the next one.
Yeah. Well, have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.